Hare Krishna. In this video, we explore the recent incident involving Amoghilila Prabhu, a prominent preacher from ISKCON who has faced a one-man ban from the very organization he is serving for his remarks on Vivekananda's meat-eating habits. Vivekananda himself has cited several Vedic verses to defend his meat-eating habits, claiming it's allowed in Sanatana Dharma. But such claims are refuted by Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Join us as we seek clarity on the context of these verses and how Vivekananda's interpretation may differ from the essence of Hinduism. Let's dive deep into this topic and uncover the truth together.
What I did, I actually went to the Manusmriti because I know these people know how to misquote. And in fact, in another place, Vivekananda says that this stoppage of cow slaughter and all this started only after Buddhism. Buddhism, they preached the ahimsa paramo dharma, non-violence. And after that, it is the Buddhist influence that, cows are not slaughtered and animals not slaughtered, vegetarianism. This all started after Buddhism. Before that, Hindus were eating everything. There is no distinction. That is what Vivekananda was saying. So this is fifth chapter of the Manu Samhita, text 1, and we will read until like 40 something. Yeah, I'll just read the translation. The sages, having heard the duties of a Snataka, thus declared, and mind you, these translations are given by probably a non-devotee who is a Sanskrit scholar who may not be Paka Vaishnav. So, the way a pure devotee would interpret certain words would translate it might be slightly different, but anyway, we can get quite a clear picture even now. Okay, the sages, having heard the duties of a Snataka, thus declared, spoke to great soul Bhrigu, who sprang from fire. How can death have power over Brahmanas who know the sacred signs, the Veda, and who fulfill their duties as they have been explained by thee, O Lord? Righteous Bhrigu, the son of Manu, thus answered the great sages. Here, in punishment of what faults death seeks to shorten the lives of Brahmanas? In punishment of what faults death seeks to shorten the lives of Brahmanas? So, what will shorten the lives of Brahmanas? What are their faults? Through neglect of the Veda study, through deviation from the rule of conduct, through remissness in the fulfillment of duties, that means neglecting the fulfillment of duties, and through faults committed by eating forbidden food, death becomes eager to shorten the lives of Brahmanas. Then it goes on to say, garlic, leeks, and onion, mushrooms, and all plants springing from impure substances are unfit to be eaten by twice born men. So here it is the verse which says this: garlic, leeks, and onions, mushrooms. One should carefully avoid red exudations from trees and juices flowing from incisions, the selu fruit, and the thickened milk of a cow which she gives after calving. So the red exudations are like from trees, like the sap of trees, and juices flowing from incisions or cuts of the tree. So that should not be taken. In the selu fruit and the thickened milk of a cow. In fact, I remember when I was small, in Telugu we call it jonnapalu. Jonnapalu means after giving birth to a calf, the cow will give very thick milk, very thick. And the milkman used to sell us this thing, sell people, and we also got it. I did not particularly like it. I remember when I was a small kid, and I do not know. I think my mother did not know at that time or what. So we are actually not supposed to take that. According to this is one of the forbidden foods, thickened milk of a cow, and it's very very thick, honestly. So next, rice boiled with sesame, wheat mixed with butter, milk and sugar, milk rice and flour cakes which are not prepared for a sacrifice, meat which has not been sprinkled with water while sacred texts were recited, food offered to the gods and sacrificial viands, the milk of a cow or other female animal within 10 days after her calving, that of camels, of one-hoofed animals, of sheep, of a cow in heat. That means cow in heat means who is ready to mate. The milk of a cow, of one-hoofed animals, of sheep, of a cow in heat, or of one that has no calf with her. The milk of all wild animals excepting buffalo cows, and the milk of women, and all substances turned sour must be avoided. So even milk and sugar, milk rice, flour cakes which are not prepared for a sacrifice. I mean, even vegetarian things not prepared for a sacrifice should not be taken. And meat which has not been sprinkled with water should not be taken. That means it sounds like meat which is sprinkled with water can be taken, right? For Brahmanas. And what is this? Okay, let's understand. Let's read the whole thing, then we'll get a clearer picture. Okay? Then, among things turned sour, sour milk and all food prepared of it may be eaten. Likewise, what is extracted from pure flowers, roots, and fruit. So here roots are also can be taken. And root taken means you have to uproot the plant. That means the plant will be killed. So although it is also alive, but this is part of the eatable food stuff. Let him, then 5:11, let him avoid all carnivorous birds and those living in villages and one-hoofed animals which are not specially permitted to be eaten, and the titibha parajachana. Krishna. I don't know what is that. I think it looks like another bird or what. The sparrow, the plover, the hamsa, the brahmani duck, the village cock, the sarasa crane, the ragudala, the woodpecker, the parrot, and the starling, those which feeds striking with their beaks, web-footed birds, koyasthi, those which scratch with their toes, those which dive and live on fish, meat from a slaughterhouse and dried meat, the baka, the balaka crane, the raven, the kangaritaka, animals that eat fish, village pigs, and all kinds of fishes. So these are all not to be, is to be avoided. That means meat from a slaughterhouse and dried meat should not be eaten. That's not edible actually. So whatever, sometimes meat is allowed, that will be stated later on also. But it is only for after sacrifice, and there are other rules. Now you see, he who eats the flesh of any animal is called the eater of the flesh of that particular creature. He who eats fish is an eater of every kind of flesh. Let him therefore avoid fish. So this Prabhupada said, if you eat fish, you get the sin of eating all the other animals. This is from Manusmriti 5:15. Then 5:16. But the fish called pathina and that called rohita may be eaten if used for offerings to the gods or to the mains. Mains means forefathers, Pitra. If used for offerings to the gods or the mains, one may eat likewise ragivas, simhatundas, and sasalkas on all occasions. So it looks like, you see, some fish can be eaten in certain, and it is always tied to the rituals. If it is done with the rituals, then it can be eaten. And mind you, this is to the forefathers. That is exactly the palapaitrikam. The offering of meat to the forefathers is one of the 5 things that are kalo pancha vivarjaye. In Kali Yuga, it has to be given. It cannot be done. It should not be done. And cow sacrifice, horse sacrifice. How can you sacrifice a cow? That's like cow slaughter, right? But no, it was not. And let's read it. It will all be given here now. Then next, let him not eat solitary or unknown beasts and birds, though they may fall under the categories of eatable creatures, nor any 5-toed animals. The porcupine, the hedgehog, the iguana, the rhinoceros, the tortoise, and the hare they declare to be eatable. For the Brahmanas, this is. Likewise, those domestic animals that have teeth in one jaw only, excepting camels. A twice-born man who knowingly eats mushrooms, a village pig, garlic, a village cock, onions, or leeks will become an outcast. He who unwittingly partakes of any of these 6 shall perform a samtapana, krikra, or lunar penance, chandrana of ascetics. In case he who has eaten any other kind of forbidden food, he shall fast for 1 day and a night. Once a year, a brahmana must perform the shrikra penance in order to atone for unintentionally eating forbidden food, but for intentionally eating forbidden food, he must perform the penances prescribed specially. Beasts and birds recommended for consumption may be slain by brahmanas for sacrifices and in order to feed those whom they are bound to maintain, for Agastya did this of old in the ancient times. So again, these birds and beasts that Brahmana can eat is those who are used for sacrifices. And these Brahmanas are not usually Vaishnavas. Vaishnavas don't even eat this, even those days. But these are all karma kanda things. So they may eat, and that is sacrificial offerings of the animal. Then it goes on 5:23. For in ancient times, the sacrificial cakes were made of the flesh of eatable beasts and birds at the sacrifices offered by Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. All lawful hard or soft food may be eaten, though stale, after having been mixed with fatty substances, and so may the remains of sacrificial viands. But all preparations of barley and wheat, as well as preparations of milk, may be eaten by twice-born men without being mixed with fatty substances, though they may have stood for a long time. Thus has the food allowed and forbidden to twice-born men been fully described. I will now propound the rules for eating and avoiding meat. One may eat meat when it has been sprinkled with water, while mantras were recited, when brahmanas desire one's doing it, when one is engaged in the performance of a rite according to the law, and when one's life is in danger. So this is when meat can be eaten, when it has been sprinkled with water. Not just sprinkled with water, this is prokshana, it is called. It is part of the sacrificial process, not just like any just wantonly killing, slaughterhouse. No, you can't do that. And this is, even these were followed by brahmanas or not of very high grade. Others did not. I mean, Vaishnava brahmanas, they never did. Narad Muni never ate meat, whether which yuga or whether it's Kali Yuga or Satya Yuga, you will never find Narad Muni doing that. So this is for karma kanda section of the. So there are these injunctions in the Manusmriti. But again, these has to be understood according to time, place, and circumstance. Not in Kali Yuga. These sacrifices itself cannot be performed. What to speak of eating their meat? Nowadays it's just killing, slaughtering. That is totally different from these sacrifices, and that will be also explained. Okay? The Lord of creatures, Prajapati, created this whole world to be the sustenance of the vital spirit. Both the immovable and the movable creation is food of the vital spirit. It looks like it can be eaten. Well, it can be eaten by certain classes of species. For carnivorous beasts like lions, and tigers or even dogs, they may eat. So that is ordained for them by Krishna. And in sacrificial performances for brahmanas or for humans, what is destitute of motion is the food of those endowed with locomotion. That means basically charanam annam achara. Those which are destitute of motion means those who cannot move. They are the food for those who can move. This is very similar to the Bhagavatam verse. Ahastani sahastanam apadani chatushpadam phalguni tatra mahatam jivo jivas jivanam. So the weak is the subsistence for the strong. So in this way, what is destitute of motion is the food for of those endowed with locomotion. That means those which cannot move are the food for those which can move. Animals without fangs are the food of those with fangs or teeth. Those without hands of those who possess hands. So those without hands are the food of those who possess hands, and the timid of the bold. The timid creatures are the food for the bold. So this is the rule of the world. Jivo jivasya jivanam. One living entity has to subsist on another living entity for its food. The eater who daily even devours those destined to be his food commits no sin. For the Creator himself created both the eaters and those who are to be eaten for those special purposes. So whatever is our ordained food, if we eat that, there is no sin. But that also Krishna says in a different, he gives a higher instruction, which is yajna sishtashinaha santo muchante sarvakilbishai bhunjate te tvagham papa ye pachante atmakaran. Even if we eat those food which is destined for us, but if we don't offer it in sacrifice to Krishna, then that is sin. Now 531. The consumption of meat is befitting for sacrifices. That is declared to be a rule made by the gods. Now this is now getting more clear. The consumption of, let me read that again. The consumption of meat is befitting for sacrifices. That is declared to be a rule made by the gods, but to persist in using it on other occasions is said to be a proceeding worthy of Rakshasas. He who eats meat when he honors the gods and manes, forefathers, commits no sin. And this is Palapaitrika. Pitra means forefathers. Paitrika means of the forefathers or for the forefathers. Palapaitrika means this meat for the forefathers. This is the thing that is, if we eat that, then commits no sin. So this was allowed in previous yugas, just like Niyoga was allowed in previous yugas, where a brother's wife, a man can beget children in his brother's wife. So if you see from the today's point of view, it is totally immoral. What is this? Brother having sex with his brother's wife? What is this going on? So, but it was not performed in the same way. But people had that mental control in those days, and Brahmanas used to have the power to chant those mantras to bring a new life in the sacrificed animal, and therefore this meat actually becomes a sacrificial offering and is fit to be eaten. That is all not possible in Kali Yuga. And because these kind of quotations were there in Manusmriti and also Rig Veda, this person has quoted, they were misused, and that's why Buddha had to come, in fact, because Vedas say we can kill animals, we will just kill animals. See, Manusmriti says, Rig Veda says this says that says, and they started killing animals without any rules and regulations. And this is where Buddha came to stop that. And he's the incarnation of Krishna. He came to stop animal killing because there is a wrong understanding of the Vedic injunctions. So to use it, and Vivekananda says the opposite. After Buddha, then there's vegetarianism started. Otherwise, everybody was eating meat. So he's not a good Hindu who does not eat beef. That was the rule before. He was saying like that. This is rubbish. Because of people like him, I think, so Buddha came when there were mass slaughtering animals in the name of so-called religious life. So Buddha wanted to stop that, because that's exactly what Vivekananda is doing. He is vehemently, in fact, I've read, because of this issue of Amogalila and all these things, I actually read some of the quotations of Vivekananda about meat. One student asked him, one of his own students, can I eat meat? Please go ahead and eat meat. Now in India, everybody is, starving and, poor and hungry, and so many people are dying. I can't see people dying. This is tamasic, that we are dying of disease and all this. This is very more of ignorance, tamasic. So we have to rise to sattvagun, but in the middle there is rajasic, more of passion, and that's what we need. That's what India needs right now. That we need the rajasic energy, and for that, please, everybody must eat meat without any hesitation. Please eat meat. He gave a order to his student, and this is his understanding, and he's using these things, these quotations, to say that meat was common among things. Only after Buddhism it became this vegetarian thing and all. So that is his argument. But here it is totally different, and because of this kind of interpretations, only the Buddha came. Because I think there were many people like this Vivekananda who were talking nonsense, and that's exactly why Buddha came to stop. And now again Vivekananda says, there's Buddha came, and therefore Buddha came because of people like Vivekananda who misinterpreted the Vedas and started animal killing. This is the nonsense. So he who eats meat when he honors the gods and manes commits no sin, whether he has bought it or himself has killed the animal or has received it as a present from others. But it is only in these sacrifices. A twice born man who knows the law must not eat meat except in conformity with the law, for if he has eaten it unlawfully, he will, unable to save himself, be eaten after death by his victims. That means that animal will kill him. That is exactly now will be mentioned. the definition of meat, mamsa. And 534. After death, the guilt of one who slays deer for gain is not as great as that of him who eats meat for no sacred purpose. It means the guilt of the person who eats meat for no sacred purpose is very, very great. But a man who, being duly engaged to officiate or to dine at a sacred rite, refuses to eat meat, becomes after death an animal during 21 existences. So this is this Karmakanda rules that he has to eat meat, and if he refuses, then he becomes after death an animal during 21 lifetimes. So now this is the 530 and 35 were quoted by the Vivekananda follower. 530 is the eater who daily even devours those destined to be his food commits no sin, for the Creator himself created both the eaters and those who are to be eaten for those special purposes. And 535, but a man who are duly engaged to officiate or dine at a sacred rite refuses to eat meat, becomes after death an animal during 21 existences. But there is more to it than these injunctions also. We will go to that later. Let's finish this Manusmriti part. A Brahmana must never eat the flesh of animals unhallowed by mantras, but obedient to the primeval law, he may eat it consecrated with Vedic texts. If he has, now 537, if he has a strong desire for meat, he may make an animal of clarified butter or of flour and eat that, but let him never seek to destroy an animal without a lawful reason. That means mock meat, like Chinese, this is very common, mock meat. That mock meat is even authorized by Manusmriti. If you really want to, if you have a strong desire for meat, make an animal out of ghee, if you can, or butter, something like that, or made of flour, and that's what that mock meat is all about. It's made of flour. So at least eat that, but never let him seek to destroy an animal without a lawful reason. Then he said, as many hairs as the slain beast has, so often indeed will he who killed it without a lawful reason suffer a violent death in future births. That means if the animal he has killed has 1000 hairs on it, 1000 lifetimes he has to be killed, a violent death in the future. Now, which animal has only 1000 hairs? Millions each animal. So just imagine. So Manusmriti is not condoning animal killing. Oh, do it, everybody can eat meat. No. You see how they're misquoting these things. So we must know these arguments very, very well and face these rascals who are misrepresenting the Vedas. Now let's read further. Swayambhu, who is Brahma, the self-existent, himself created animals for the sake of sacrifices. Sacrifices have been instituted for the good of this whole world. Hence, the slaughtering of beasts for sacrifices is not slaughtering in the ordinary sense of the word. This is the thing. And explanation continues in the next verse. Herbs, trees, cattle, birds, and other animals that have been destroyed for sacrifices receive, being reborn, higher existences. You see, they receive higher existences that have been offered for sacrifice. This is very different from a slaughter. So that's why those beasts which are slaughtered for the sacrifices is not slaughtering in the ordinary sense of the word. Avadha, vadho avadha. You see the Sanskrit, I don't know if you can read it. Yajne vadho avadha. In the matter of sacrifices, in the yajna, when they are slaughtered, it is not slaughter in the ordinary sense of the word. So this cow slaughter, horse slaughter, they are not just slaughtering. It is not cow slaughter, cow sacrifice, horse sacrifice. It's not the ordinary slaughter. It's very different. And they immediately get higher bodies, humans or even demigods. And even it is said not only of the slaughtered animals, but even the herbs, trees. So even if we so-called kill the animal plants, like the potato, for example, we have to uproot the plant, right? Or carrots or other roots. They also achieve higher existences. Or if we have to take some flower from the plant, fruits, flower, they all get higher existences, higher births, very higher births, human body. Immediately they jump the whole evolutionary cycle and come to human life. How much benefit is that? So this is very different. And anyway, Krishna says, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam. Krishna never encourages this meat offerings. No, he does not want meat offerings. He wants only in the vegetarian category and milk, dairy products. So these things we can give to Krishna offering. So these meat offerings that are done, these are all karmakanda, Palapaitrikam, all this Pitru Puja, Devata Puja and all these things. These are in the Karmakanda section, not in the Vaishnava section. And even then they have to be only done for sacrifices, not simply wanton killing. You can't equate this to buying meat of the supermarket and saying, okay, this is, meat is allowed. Manusmriti says we can eat. Oh, we can eat meat of this bird and this animal, that animal. So I will buy the meat of that bird and this animal and I will eat. That is nonsense. It has to be in the sacrifice only, not any other. Otherwise, as many hairs, if it is as many hairs as the body has of that animal, that many times he will be subject to violent death in the future. Okay. Now, in offering the honey mixture, that means the madhuparka, to a guest at a sacrifice and at the rites in honor of the mains, that means the forefathers, but on these occasions only may an animal be slain. That rule Manu proclaimed. So I don't understand this madhuparka offering to a guest, and at that time the animal is slaughtered. Again, these are things which are done in other yugas, and there are ways how to do it and for what reasons. And also, these are not Vaishnava principles, these are more of Karmakanda rituals, and the sacrifice and the rites in honor of the forefathers. These things are done in other yugas, and they have certain moral principles attached to it, which we in today's Kali Yuga we cannot understand such moral principles with our view of things, because we have such a contaminated mind, so we cannot understand those things. Like Yoga is a perfect example. We cannot understand how it can be lawful that a man can beget in his brother's wife. Which brother would, which man would, where it will be accepted, this kind of thing. So it is unimaginable in today's context, yes. But in those days, it was acceptable. But it has to be done in the proper way. Now, a twice born man who, knowing the true meaning of the Vedas, slays an animal for these purposes, causes both himself and the animal to enter a most blessed state. Most blessed state means, again, let me tell you one thing. These kinds of flowery language of the Vedas are not the real fruit of the Vedas. Oh, most blessed state. What is the most blessed state? Oh, Krishna consciousness. No. That's this thing. Just to encourage them to do, because those people who really want to eat animals, the Vedas encourage in this way. This kind of language is used in the Vedas for encouraging such people. Karmakanda section. That's why Vedavada Ratah Partha Nanyadastiti Vadinaha Yamimam Pushpitam Vacham Pravadant Avipaschitaha. They are not actually intelligent who become attracted to these kinds of statements. They are not actually the real statements of the Vedas. I'll tell you why. I'll show you those verses. Because this can be a little bit misleading, right? Oh, slays an animal for these purposes, causes both himself and animal to enter a most blessed state. But it's actually not that blessed, honestly. It is a way to encourage the person, but it's not the real thing. Okay? Let me get to that. Okay. A twice born man of virtuous disposition, whether he dwells in his own house, with a teacher, or in the forest, must never, even in times of distress, cause an injury to any creature which is not sanctioned by the Veda. Know that injury to moving creatures and to those destitute of motion, which the Vedas has prescribed for certain occasions, is no injury at all, for the sacred law shown forth from the Veda. So, it is injury that an animal receives. In fact, just now we have read the other quotation from the Manusmriti where it says animals were created for being sacrificed, and in that way they attain human existence next life. But so in that process, if there is injury to the animal, there is no injury at all, for the sacred law shown forth from the Veda. But although it is said like this, it is covering the real aspect of the real truth of everything, and we will see why. This is actually a little bit of a flowery language, but it's not the naked truth. Even then it is quite clear that it's only in sacrifice in certain lawful occasions one can do, and that too even for karmakanda things. He who injures innoxious beings from a wish to give himself pleasure never finds happiness, neither living nor dead. So if he kills those animals from a wish to give himself pleasure, never finds happiness. So nowadays people eat meat for what? To give himself pleasure. Oh, I like the taste of this meat, that meat. That is nonsense. Never finds happiness. Yeah, this is totally different from, that's why we equate those sacrificial eatings to our sense gratificatory eatings. That is totally different. Just like sacrificial or dutiful sex in yoga is very different from sense gratificatory sex of husband and wife. So it's very, very different. But we cannot do one without the other. Like if yoga was allowed, then there will be all kind of extramarital affairs, 5 brothers killing each other, and then all kind of things will happen. So we cannot differentiate the two. But people were so self-controlled they could do that without being influenced by lust. We cannot equate such sacrificial eatings to sense gratificatory eatings of meat. He who does not seek to cause the sufferings, and now here you see very clear, he who does not seek to cause the sufferings of bonds and death to living creatures, but desires the good of all beings, obtains endless bliss. This is the real statement actually. Until now it was a flowery statement, but it's not really, really real. But this is real statement. So this is why Vedas can be a little bit confusing, because they encourage the unlawful rascals who want to eat meat to somehow encourage them. Okay, you really want to eat meat? Do some sacrifices, and you will enter a most blessed state. This and that, you can eat this, you can eat that, you cannot eat this, you cannot eat. Okay, there is some rules. Okay, I can eat meat. Okay, I'll do this sacrifice. So to encourage them only, but it's not the real fruit of the Veda. It's not that by eating meat we are true followers of Vedas. No, that is a step in the right direction, but it's nowhere close to actual religious principles, which is at the zenith of all religion, which is Vaishnavism. This statement, which is 547, where you can see, he who does not injure any creatures attains without an effort what he thinks of, what he undertakes, and what he fixes his mind on. And 546, 547, these are all 548 also. Let's read again 546 or 545 even. He who injures innoxious beings from a wish to give himself pleasure never finds happiness, neither living nor dead. That is 545. 546. He who does not seek to cause the sufferings of bonds and death to living creatures, but desires the good of all beings, obtains endless bliss. He who does not injure any creature attains without an effort what he thinks of, what he undertakes, and what he fixes his mind on. So you see how it is encouraged not to actually injure any creature. So although these things are mentioned in the beginning, again it ends with instructions which are more Vaishnavic, because that is the higher principle. Pravrittiresha bhutanam nivrittistu mahaphala. So then it goes on further. Meat can never be obtained without injury to living creatures, and injury to sentient beings is detrimental to the attainment of heavenly bliss. Let him therefore shun the use of meat. Now, is it not like contradictory to the previous verses? Oh, no, that injury to in the sacrifice is no injury at all. Yeah, to an extent, but it's not entirely true. Not entirely true. This now is the actual statement. So it is slowly, taming the uncontrolled mind who wants to eat meat, who wants to do all sinful things. Slowly taming the mind. That is what the Vedas offer. That's why we should not get too much distorted. Hey, why Vedas say like this? So sometimes the Vedas say things which sometimes they promise, oh, you will have this beautiful apsaras, in heavenly planets. You can go to Nandana gardens, and the gardens are so beautiful with lakes and trees and foliage and these beautiful parks and beautiful birds chirping and this and that, valleys, mountains inside the parks. It's a beautiful Nandana gardens of the heavenly planets. Unmatched beauty. Now, why do Vedas, glorify such things? It is not that they are the, things that we have to attain. These are the flowery language of the Vedas. Pushpitam vacham, flowery language, but actually it is rubbish. For a Vaishnava, hell, even liberation is rubbish if there is no seva. He does not want these beautiful gardens and romantic adventures with the young women apsaras. He doesn't want nadhanam, najanam, nasundarim, kavitam, jagadisha kamaye. So these are promises for idiots. Idiots, if they have to be slowly elevated, then you can be a good idiot here. You can enjoy your life, with these things. Eat meat and enjoy sacrificial offerings. Yeah, but still, let me take to the Bhagavatam verse, which gives us real deal. Of course, there is sacrificial offering, but it is not the same. It is definitely not sinful like eating slaughterhouse meat, but it's also not the highest. It's not that, oh, this is the highest thing we should eat. No. Having well considered the disgusting origin of flesh and the cruelty of fettering and slaying corporeal beings, let him entirely abstain from eating flesh. 549. Quite clear, right? He who disregarding the rule given above does not eat meat like a pisacha becomes dear to men and will not be tormented by diseases. You see, he who disregarding the rule given above does not eat meat like a pisacha becomes dear to men and will not be tormented by disease. You see, that means even these rules that are mentioned in the Manusmriti, if he disregard those rules and he does not eat meat like a pisacha, like a ghost, like a pisacha means like a bhoot, like a demon, becomes dear to man and will not be tormented by diseases. That means meat eating has disease. That means it is encouraged to disregard the rules given above. Look at this now. So pravrittiresha bhutanam nivrittistu mahaphala. So it is actually encouraged to give up the meat eating completely. Disregard the rule given above, and who does not eat the meat like a pisacha becomes dear to man and will not be tormented. Then 551, you see, he who permits the slaughter of an animal, he who cuts it up, he who kills it, he who buys or sells meat, he who cooks it, he who serves it up, and he who eats it must all be considered as the slayers of the animal. Anumanta vishasita nihanta kriyavikrayi sanskarta cha upaharta cha khadakascha iti ghataka. All of them are punishable. So these are real instructions now. So when we quote certain quotations, we have to quote the right one. Don't quote something out of context to suit your argument. This is rubbish. So these people have to be exposed. This is why I want to make a video on Vivekananda, completely smashing his points and completely smashing any of the followers who come up with this kind of quotations to like unsettle the minds of those Vaishnavas who are trying to preach. We Vaishnavas also should know these things so that in what context they were quoted and what is the ultimate instruction that is actually being given out, right? 552. There is no greater sinner than that man who, though not worshipping the gods or the mains, seek to increase the bulk of his own flesh by the flesh of other beings. You want to eat meat? There is no greater sinner than that man who, though not worshipping the gods or the mains, seeks to increase the bulk of his own flesh by the flesh of other beings. He who during 100 years annually offers a horse sacrifice and who entirely abstains from meat obtain the same reward for their meritorious conduct. You see, he who during 100 years annually offers a sacrifice, that means every year Ashwamedha Yajna is doing for 100 years. And the one who is abstaining from meat completely without doing any of Ashwamedha Yajna obtain the same reward for their meritorious conduct. That means Ashwamedha Yajna, how costly such yajna is very, very expensive. So to eat that horse meat, he has to perform a sacrifice which undertakes such huge expenses and huge efforts. And the mantras of the chanting absolutely must be perfect without a single fault. These things are necessary for these sacrifices sacrifices to even be effective. And after all that, he gets only that much merit of those who does not eat meat, abstains from meat this whole life. That means what is being said here now? That means not eating meat is the best thing, best way to go. And he in 550 you can see, he who disregarding the rule given above does not eat meat like a pisacha becomes dear to man and will not be tormented by diseases. That means meat eating gives out all kinds of diseases. That's another thing we have to know from Manusmriti, this word. By subsisting on pure fruit and roots and by eating food fit for ascetics in the forests, one does not gain so great a reward as by entirely avoiding the use of flesh. That means by avoiding the use of flesh entirely, one gets so great a reward that it's not okay. I do the ascetic like a yogi. I eat in the forest and sometimes I do these animal sacrifices. That is not as great a gain than compared to the one who entirely avoids eating flesh. Then this verse, this mamsa khadati iti mamsa, there is a shorter version of it, but this is the actual full verse. Mamsa bhakshayita amutra yasya mamsam iha admyaham etat mamsasya mamsatvam pravadanti manishinaha. Me, he, mamsaha, will devour in the next world, whose flesh I eat in this life. The wise declare this to be the real meaning of the word flesh or mamsa. You see, namamsa bhakshane dosho namadye nacha maithune pravrittiresha bhutanam nivrittistu mahaphala. This is the place that this word is coming from. Pravrittiresha bhutanam nivrittistu mahaphala. There is no sin in eating meat, in drinking spirituous liquor, and in carnal intercourse or sexual intercourse, but that is the natural way of created beings. But abstention brings great rewards. You see, from here we can understand the translation is a bit off. Here they say there is no sin in eating meat because that is a natural way, but actually the real way is mentioned in the Bhagavatam. So let me show you this verse 11:5-11. Loke vyavayamishamadya seva nitya hi jantornahi tatra chodana vyavasthitisteshu vivaha yajna suragrahairasu nivrittirishta. In this material world, the conditioned soul is always inclined to sex, meat eating, and intoxication. So nahi dosho means it looks like there is no sin in doing this. Actually, it's not like no sin. It is not a fault that one is attracted to meat eating and illicit sex and gambling, because that is the way of conditioned soul. Because so that is the nature. But it is not fault means it is not that there is no fault in doing that. But to have those tendencies is not unnatural because we are conditioned in that way. But so pravritti, therefore for such people, these kinds of pravritti marga in which sacrificial offerings of meat and all this is recommended. But nivrittistu mahaphala, you see, that is the ultimate instruction there in that whole series, right? So this we have to understand. So everywhere, although this is glorified in flowery language, it is so great, by eating meat. Actually, it's not so great. Honestly, it's not great. So that we will understand. Let's read this and finish this translation. In this material world, the conditioned soul is always inclined to sex, meat eating, and intoxication. Therefore, religious scriptures never actually encourage such activity. Although the scriptural injunctions provide for sex through sacred marriage, for meat eating through sacrificial offerings, you see, there is scriptural injunctions for meat eating through sacrificial offerings, and for intoxication through the ritual cups of acceptance of ritual cups of wine. Such ceremonies are meant for the ultimate purpose of renunciation, and that's exactly what Manusmriti was doing. This just now we have read. It is encouraging kind of, but actually it is meant for ultimate purpose of renunciation. Those are the most important sections or verses that one should focus on. But this man, he supported this Vivekananda. He was quoting these verses which were in the middle of that Karmakanda section where all the flowery language was used to kind of encourage those people, those verses. But the really important verses, that was not quoted. See, this is the defect of these people. So we have to be very careful in understanding these injunctions and why such range of injunctions are mentioned. In one place it is said you have to eat meat. If he refuses, to eat meat in a sacrificial performance, 21 generations will, 21 rebirths he will have to suffer and be slaughtered. So it looks like very, very exaggerated claim. Actually, they're exaggeration. And the reward also is a big exaggeration, as if it's the greatest and most blessed state. What is most blessed? As if they're in Vaikuntha. It's not most blessed. Nonsense. And let's see, this is the 11:5-14. Ye tvanevam vidosantah stabdhaha sadabhimanina pashun druhyanti vishrabdhaha pretya khadanti te chatan. Those sinful persons who are ignorant of actual religious principles yet consider themselves to be completely pious without compunction, without any guilt, without any hesitation, commit violence against innocent animals who are fully trusting in them. In their next life, such sinful persons will be eaten by the same creatures they have killed in this world. And of course, there are other verses also where he says, "Don't you see?" I think Narada Muni instructing Prachina Bharati, "Don't you see those animals, in the sky that are being killed by you in sacrifices? They are waiting to kill you." So he says like that. So this is in the fourth canto. There are so many injunctions, and it is not that, oh, Bhagavatam, these are only 5,000 years ago, and Puranas, they contradict each other. Before this is all, Rig Veda and all this Manusmriti, they are all actually permitting. Only Bhagavatam, this 5,000-year-old book only are talking about this. Before that, it was all rubbish, absolute rubbish. Yeah, we have sufficiently proved that he is talking nonsense, and we have to know like this how to counter these arguments. We have to be strong enough to counter these arguments, and we have to absolutely smash these people. No compromise at all. No banning people for smashing, and absolutely must be smashed. Vivekananda is a nonsense, and we will expose him. That's it. And I have just done it, this argument. And I have more things to say, but now, anyway, I've already super digressed. But I think it is important because that is a hot topic right now, and my video on Vivekananda has not come out. I'm seriously thinking of a format in which I can quickly churn out videos on all these topics that come about. I'll soon announce something on that. But until then, at least you have the answers to some of these pressing questions that with these, especially because it's a hot topic, these kind of questions may come up, and sometimes we may be bewildered.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insightful discussions.